All right, so we have a few exercises for the CSS methodologies, and they're really meant to give you a chance to play around with each of these individual patterns and your implementations of them. And keep in mind, especially with OOCSS and SMACS, like your implementation might differ, and that's okay. And I'll walk around and we can talk about what kind of differentiates the two. BEM is certainly different, so you should be able to make a pretty consistent do a pretty consistent implementation of BEM because it's pretty strict. So the first one is this media object exercise. And this media object is so core to OOCSS and how we think about reusability. And so what I'm going to ask for this exercise is to go ahead and create your own media object. Unfortunately, the projector doesn't show this well, but maybe I can. Well, okay, cool. So yeah, so this is, we're going to create a media object so that has an image floated to the left or right with a block of text. And again, this will sort of get the code flowing for the day and start writing some CSS. Pick one of the patterns to write in. Pick OOCSS, BEM, or SMACS. And then try to nest the media objects, right? You should be able to nest these. That's part of these components, so they should be nestable. So that's the first exercise. You can do these in any order. The second exercise that I have is it's called input label pairs. Again, the links are here, but input label pairs is in the CSS patterns input label pairs folder. And the idea here is creating this little pattern here of, and I'll zoom in. A lot of times in a form, we see this pattern where we have a label and then some sort of border down the middle, or like an invisible border, but you can sort of imagine there's an axis there at least. And then on the other side, you have an input. And then after the input, you might have something in parentheses that's like information about how to fill that in. So you might have name, border, and then like a text field. These are centered, and then down a center axis. So that's the style, is that you just want to center this and put a border down the middle, and then on the other side have your input. And those should both be aligned to the border. So one is aligned left and one's aligned right. Yeah, so and what I want you to try to do is create, so I've already created the HTML for you. So I have name, I have input, I have first and last, I have phone, I have date of birth, and then like the info sections here are just in parentheses, like this is what the format would be. You can add classes, so add classes for label, input, and span. And then I've set up, oh, that was meant to say SMACS, so you can change that to SMACS. So change atomic CSS to SMACS. But implement each one of these in a different pattern. Implement one of them in OOCSS, implement one of them in BEM, and implement one of them in SMACS. So you'll duplicate your CSS, but the point is to kind of compare the difference. And then if you have some time, it's just like adding a modifier to one of them. Add a modifier for required, where you have a little asterisk at the top, or right next to the label. And yeah, compare them. Which one do you prefer? Some people prefer the stricter ones like BEM. Some people prefer the approach that OOCSS takes. That's perfectly fine. But get a sense of how these are different, how they're similar. So these are in the GitHub repo. We won't get to the last one, refactoring tabs. So focus on one of the first two, pick one, and we'll just start implementing these, and then we'll take a look.